Good evening. I'd like to call to order the January 24th, 2023 Assembly meeting. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Sarah, roll call.
Mr. Mosher,
Here.
Ms. Duncan,
Here.
Mr. Yestad,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Pike,
Here.
and Ms. Carlson.
Here.
And Mayor Eisenbach is absent this evening.
Okay, that brings us to correspondence and agenda changes. Are there any correspondence or agenda changes this evening, Assembly? Okay. Moving on to special reports, we have two this evening. First is Sitka Tribal Council Chairman Woody Widmark.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Assembly members, I want to report from the tribal councils, two meetings this month from January 4th and January 18th. To summarize, the tribal council approved three resolutions on the January 4th meeting regarding Alaska Department of Transportation regarding funding, and authorized submission of a grant to NOAA, and authorized submission of proposal to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Partners for a Fisheries Monitoring Program. At its January 18th Tribal Council meeting, the council approved numerous donations. One was to the Sitka High School class of 2023. Donation to Raven Radio, donation to the Barracuda Swim Club, approved resolution, or excuse me, enrollment resolutions to the tribe. Approved the resolution authorizing the tribe to participate in the U.S. Department of Transportation self-governance program. And last but not least, approved a proposed agenda for the tribe and the city and upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we have Alex Snelling from the Sitka, or from the Bear Task Force.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We had 9 consecutive meetings where we discussed conclusions and recommendations. One of the recommendations we came up with was bear-resistant trash cans. Another was citations given with replacement of bear-damaged cans. Having a bear trash account seasonally, where residents can drop off things that if they run out of space in their homes, and a handout for the community that could be mailed out at the beginning of the season, given with citations, given with replacement trash cans, and available at the transfer station or anywhere else.
Anything else?
Did you have any other questions? It's a pretty long report that I did, so I just tried to kind of summarize what we came up with.
Okay, I see Mr. Green up. Did you have any comments to add to that?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to thank everybody that was involved in this. It was, you know, a lot of people in their personal time, and other agencies, parks, Park Service, Forest Service, Fish and Game, Native community, all the people involved that had input to this, and wanted to make sure everybody got thanked for their time, and appreciate it.
Thank you. So is this the conclusion of the of the task force, or is this?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Leach?
Yeah, I have a question for the members of the task force. I saw well, first off, thank you for the report and thank you for the work. I saw the article on Raven Radio this morning, and I heard a brief clip of it, but there was something in there. Well, first of all, the bear-proof trash cans, the one we're recommending is the one that I think the bears broke into all of them essentially, but the one we're looking at is the one that took them 12 minutes to get into, if I read correctly.
Yeah, it was a bear resistant trash can.
Okay.
They were not
Not
bear
bear proof. But the last one was, it said it had an estimated cost to cover, it said full replacement of trash cans, but it listed 280 total trash cans. We obviously have well more than 280 in the city of Sitka. I was curious what defined full replacement. Was there a specific area that they were looking to replace cans? How was that 280 determined to be full replacement?
The 280 is a full shipment. It's one shipment up. So the cost involved with that was for one full shipment, which is their minimum order. So they have to be ordered in sections of 280. So that's what that quote was based on.
Okay, so essentially, let's call it $100,000 for easy math. Divide the number of trash cans in town by 280 times that by 1 million. That's what it's going to essentially look like for our costs if we were to replace every can. So, okay.
Yes, the other thing with it is those were the only ones that were after the bear broke into them, they were still be able to be reused.
Okay.
They weren't a total loss.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Leach, is this information going to be on our website or anything like that for the public?
Sarah's giving me the north-south nod, so yes.
Yes, we're gonna put the report on the Bear Task Force webpage.
Okay, perfect. Did any assembly members have any questions? Okay, thank you so much for your service. Very much appreciated. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to, so I skipped over the municipal boards, commissions, committees for special reports, municipal departments, school district, the school district here for a report.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight and for your service. Blossom Teal Olson, Bunny Rock, Sitka School Board President. I'm happy to be here tonight to report just a short report. We have upcoming budget hearing sessions. The first one being January 31st at 3:45. These are for staff of our district. It's going to be at the Sitka Library, 3:45 to 4:15 for Pacific High School, 4:30 to 5 for Baranoff Elementary School, 5:15 to 5:45 for Sitka High School. That again is January 31st. And then February 2nd, we will have more staff hearings on the budget at 3:45 to 4:15 for Keet Gushaheen and 4:30 to 5 for Blatchley Middle School. We also have the community budget hearing session here at Centennial Hall at 6 p.m. February 9th. So the public is welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, for special reports, we have students and guests. Okay, we're going to move on to persons to be heard. Persons to be heard is for public participation on any item off the agenda that's not on the agenda tonight, not to exceed 3 minutes per individual. Also, just a reminder, this is not a back and forth. It's your opportunity to speak what you want to that's on anything that's not on the agenda. And but it's not a back and forth between you and the assembly. Okay, is there any public comment for items off the agenda? Please come forward and state your first and last name for the record.
Good evening, Assembly. My name is Richard Ween. I first would like to welcome all the people I see behind me, the werewolves of Sitka. And I can see they're coming from their government class, so make sure you take notes. I'm sure there'll be a quiz. The word for tonight for you Sitkans, Sitka High students, is Kuroshio. Kuroshio. It is something that affects Sitkans every day and has since almost time began. Kuroshio. An important thing to note is that I like to read, and I read things from all over the world. And I picked up, and I file things that catch my eye. And I picked up an article from Australia where a boat was prevented from docking in Australia, and they kept it out at sea. And apparently it was because it had a fouled bottom, probably snails of some sort, but that's not been the only boat out in Australia. As we speak, it's 83 degrees in Sydney. Nice. It's kind of summer there while we're in the midst of winter. That's how the axis works on planet Earth. Now, what caught my eye is that I saw the list of boats that were going to be docking here in Sitka. And one of them was the Viking Orion. Now, of interest is that was the same boat that was in Australia, which was not allowed to dock. And where that becomes interesting is because apparently Australian officials are checking bottoms for invasive species. So it becomes even more interesting because Governor Dunleavy canceled the Ocean Ranger program due to non-funding. And so we're not checking wastewater. But I found it interesting when you have some boats coming from, in essence, a tropical clime, which will also be docking here in Sitka. So I just wanted to call this for the record, because I think we have a real interest here, especially in invasive species, which we already have a few running around our waters. So please, for the record, remember that sometimes these ships, and a lot of ships come in here, but these are special ships because they come from tropical waters, etc. So keep that in mind, and I hope we don't find any unusual snails unless they're served at Ludwig's.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for persons to be heard? Okay, moving on. We're at the consent agenda consisting of items A and B. Are there any items Assembly members would like to pull for discussion? Hearing none. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, January 10th Assembly meeting minutes, and B, authorizing an application to the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Second.
Is there any public comment on the consent agenda?
Richard Ween. This is a grant application for the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. It's an application for $627,820, which is important information for the public to know. And even more important, it's a non-matching grant. The city applies for these, I believe, every year, and hopefully they will receive this. The funding is for $67,000 for portable radios for fire department EMS and search and rescue, and $410,000 for just radio replacements, mobile, et cetera. And there's an interesting $150,000 to obtain a secure door system at the Sitka Police Department. I don't know anybody who'd want to break in there, but I'm sure there's good reason for it. But it's important that people know. I hope they got it. And the key here, it's a non-match grant. So good luck, Chief Beatty.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment regarding the consent agenda? Sarah, do we do discussion on this or we just do a roll call? Okay,
Okay, on the motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A and B, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
yes,
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
and Mr. Pike.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on the consent agenda.
okay, we are now at the board, commission, and committee appointments. May I have a motion, please?
I move to appoint Annette Evans to an unexpired term on the Health Needs and Human Services Commission.
Second.
Any public comment on that?
Quite it.
As always, it is important to recognize those people who step up to do community service, but especially people like Annette Evans, who is a born Sitkin, who has been down south for a number of years, but is back here. I believe she's director of ventures now, among other things. And I think that she is a true asset to the community, intelligent. And I just think it's great that she decided to serve on this particular committee, which seems to be very appropriate for her skill set. So thank you, Ms. Evans.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this appointment? Okay, back to the assembly for discussion. No? Okay, can I have a motion, please? Is that
You already have a motion. We just need a vote.
Sarah.
On the motion to approve the appointment, Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
yes,
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item C.
okay, there's no unfinished business, so we're moving on to new business. Can we have a motion on item D?
We move to approve resolution 2023-04 on first and final reading, submitting City and Borough of Sitka FY 2024 state legislative priorities to the state of Alaska and 2023 legislature.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment?
Good evening, Richard Ween. These are legislative priorities, and legislative priorities are very important. And they become more important when we notice that that in the past, there's been very little contact between legislative individuals who service in the Senate and the House. Hopefully this year that will change a little bit, but also the congressional delegation consisting of one Congresswoman and 2 senators, that they really don't connect with us very often unless it's election time. So it's important that we reach out to them to give our priorities. Now, the priorities are a working waterfront, which includes the haul out phase 1 and 2, and the electrification assistance for Eliason Harbor. Also to enhance housing and childcare. Of course, the seaplane base. Now, interesting is funding for Green Lake Hydro and for funding the airport terminal improvements. Also, money for new multi-purpose building for the Sitka Police Department and the jail, as well as funding for utility infrastructure. And of course, we cannot leave out the Alaska Marine Highway. That's the perennial question. But what is interesting is that if you look at this list, can you answer the question, can we do this list without receiving the funding? Some of these things are very, very important. And let's just say we get nothing. Does that negate the list? How what's the thought process behind this? And basically, when you think about, for example, energy generation, and if you looked at the electrical report, you see that they've been increasing the energy usage here. What you see is an upward spiral. And when you have an upward spiral like that, you have to kind of feed the machine, and you have to understand where that money is going to come from. And the question is, what are, I know we have our strategic plan and we have all of this stuff, but the big question always comes is the economy, and can we pay for it? And so can we pay for these if we don't receive any funding? For example, what's the status of Green Lake? So think about it. I know you're not going to answer, but it has some basic truths to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay, back to the assembly. I apologize. I asked you to bear with me. This is my first meeting. Sarah gave me a little list, and it's interesting trying to follow along while you're looking at a list. I was supposed to allow John to introduce the item, so I'm going to give him a chance now if you want to do that.
It was already introduced for me, so I'll have Melissa come up if she doesn't mind to kind of talk through the process. So this is important. As you know, we do this every year. The idea is we have something we can hand carry to the legislative conference we have at the end of February. It will be in Juneau. We're working on our DC lobbying trip with our lobbying firm right now. That looks like it's going to be in early March. We can take this to Southeast Conference. We really use it as a baseline for really everything we're looking to do. A very important one is CAPSIS. That's the state's capital request program. It's basically a web-based portal where you go in and plug in the projects that you have as priorities and the cost estimates behind them. So this document right here drives kind of all of our lobbying efforts, and it's a guide for our discussions. So I hope I didn't steal all your thunder, but I'll turn it over to Melissa. Thanks.
Thanks. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Assembly members. I'm Melissa Henshaw, Public and Government Relations Director. I'm excited to present to you the legislative priorities and unfunded mandates. Assembly approval of this resolution gives the city what I call mega strength when going after funding and support for both state and federal officials. The process is collaborative. Department heads work together to research data and compile paragraphs, very much a joint effort in crafting these legislative priorities. Dr. Weiner already reviewed most of them, so I will just highlight one, the Green Lake Hydro. Since we didn't ultimately receive funding for Green Lake that we had originally thought with Murkowski, Senator Murkowski had it in her earmarks, but it didn't end up being included in the final bill. So that's again on the list. By having a separate unfunded mandate list, we're able to band together with other Alaska communities to have a strong unified voice, to take these issues to our legislators and to tell our story of how they place a burden on our city budget. Discussions in Juneau are already taking place, and the highlight so far is with education, so we'll be involved with that. Next steps are these priorities and unfunded mandates will be sent to our representatives, senators, and the governor's office, along with our partners. Next month, we'll take them with us when we meet with legislators in Juneau. And these will be on the forefront of our lobbyists list. And when we are in DC, we will not only meet with our senators, representative, and governor's office, we'll also ask for meetings with federal departments to discuss these priorities. So thank you.
Thank you. So back to the assembly for deliberation.
Yeah, I actually, when I was looking through this, and I agree with everything on this list, and I'm fully aware that the way this works is the reason why it's not listed in prioritizing, because sometimes we get a shot at money that we may not have put at the very top of the list, but we just get a shot at it then. But the one glaring absence on here is I was really hoping that we would start to see asking for money to help open up some of our city lands. You know, by the high school and along Kramer Avenue, to the planning commission's been talking about trying to figure out ways to get that land opened up. And if the answer, of course, is it's going to take money. And I would really like to see us add something in for that, because we've got a lot of planning to do to be able to pull that off. And then once we have the planning, if we want to try and put utilities or roads in, it'd be really nice if we could get some help from the state or the feds. Honestly, I don't think we could really pull it off without it, at least not and provide affordable or even semi-affordable housing. So I don't know if you looked at that, you guys looked at something like that, but I would hope that if you didn't, I mean, we need to be thinking about that.
Can I answer? It is in there under, on that first page, support and funding to expand housing and childcare access. We talked about funding is requested to aid CBS in efforts in completing a municipal land development feasibility study for increased access to housing. We have some estimated costs there for that as well. We pointed out the Indian River Valley as an area. In fact, this one's very important to Senator Stedman, also being a resident here. So he sat down with us about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago in our office, and we tried to pool that into that paragraph. I mean, but if there's not enough clarity there, we can try to pull it out.
I guess I saw that. I mean, they're both very important things, but I'm not sure they go hand in hand like that. And it is a little confusing. I mean, they're, I guess, tangentially, they're both helping families, but I think a little bit of clarity there, would be better.
Anyone else?
Just looking at the unmandated from last year to this year, it looks like the jail moved into a legislative priority. Is that the big difference between a lot of the rest of it seems similar, but that looks like it actually moved up onto the list for consideration?
Sorry, the jail on the legislative priorities. and
Yeah,
not
last
the-
year it was an unmandated, and this year we're actually listing that as a priority request, right?
No, we had the jail on last year, but there's
Under
two
un-
separate police items. The other one was for the community jails program.
Okay,
And that one did, I say solved with quotes, because last year the state did boost up the funding for that program. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with the disbursement method, because they just took the number of jails and divided that into the amount of money left or available and issued that out. And they didn't really pay attention to the size of the jail we were talking about. But that we did remove that piece for community jails from the unfunded mandates, but the jail is still
Okay.
on there.
thank you for that clarification.
Anyone else? Before I try to comment on tours, I'll speak out. I think this is a good thing. I think we need to do it. Just about every community is doing it. I've sometimes wondered how effective it is, but I know that if we don't have it, it's not good at all as well. Trying to get funding from the state and the feds is very challenging, because everyone's trying to get money. And so I think we have a good grant writing team, or we're building one, and things like this will help. I'm very disappointed to hear that Green Lake was not included in that bill, or I knew it was included, but I didn't know that it hadn't made it all the way. That's very frustrating. So I'm okay with this as is, but Tor mentioned kind of wanting to change it a little bit. Did you want to make a motion to add anything?
I don't think it's a change, no, so much as a kind of a clarifying. I don't think it's a substantial change. It's just maybe splitting those two. We have two requests in the same paragraph there. So I don't think that requires a change. It's just, when we actually polish it and send it off, let's make it really clear.
Sarah, you gonna help me with that one?
I need to know what we're talking about. Actually, are we talking about the resolution, or, sorry, I've got technical stuff going on, so I'm.
Yeah, the
my
resolution.
multitask is not
It's-
going very well. Oh, no, no, I think that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, Sarah, can you do the roll call, please?
Okay, on the motion to approve resolution 2023-04 on second or first and final reading, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
and Ms. Duncan.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on item D.
Okay, that moves us on to item E. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve resolution 2023-01 on first and final reading, increasing cruise ship tender and security fees.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been read and seconded. I'd like to have Stan Eliason, the harbor master, come up and introduce the item, please.
Good evening, Stan Eliason, Harbor Master. So I'm back here again, raising the tender fees and security rates. We started doing this last year. So bottom line is, we set the mortgage rates, tender fee rates, and all the other rates that are managed by the Harbor Department. They come in effect July 1st of each year. What I'm doing here is these cruise ships are coming into town a bit earlier, and as they have been. And I believe it's a good time for us to, for one, capture additional revenue up until the new fiscal year. And by doing this, it also makes billing on our end much simpler.
Okay, is there anything else?
To add to the bottom line here, we picked up an additional $2,500. I know these are small pennies, but every dollar counts.
It's true.
For the department. So.
Okay.
And you'll probably see me here next year doing the same thing.
Okay. So Stan, I think we'll move to public comment, and then when we're in deliberations, we might call you back up. So with that being said, is there any public comment on this agenda item?
Richard Ween. This is for increasing cruise ship tenders, not to be confused with chicken tenders, and security fees. Apparently, it's an 8.3% increase, and the fees would be $1,536 a day that the city would receive over the course of 2023 for a total of $102,000, $946. The total security fees are $615 a day, and that would be for a total of $41,000 in new revenue. So to me, these things I think are great. The tourist industry, and notably the cruise folks, need to pay, I'll say, not only their costs, but cost plus. And if this brings a total of $144,000 into city coffers, then I think that that's a very good thing. Looking way in the future, I keep hearing buzzes that new private docks might be built. And if those are built, then I can see that some of this funding may disappear if they hook up their dock there. So, but I think it's a great idea, and so vote yes.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on item E? Okay, back to the assembly for deliberation. Anyone?
I did. I just had a quick question, I think.
Yeah. First, Ann?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Or perhaps for John. It was looking last year, it was 6.8% for the daily, 8.3% for security. And this year it's at 8.3 for both of those categories, correct? That's the only difference from last year was,
Yeah,
they're both 8.3% this year.
that's correct.
And then I was curious because I'm not familiar. Is this just kind of a standard 8.3 is the established increase?
What happened last year? Let's look at my notes here. Yeah, it's 6.8%. Actually, the actual inflation rate for the month of March was 8.5. So I'm kind of playing catch up here in
Okay.
a sense.
I figured it had to do with inflation somehow,
Yeah,
but
and I can't predict that stuff either. So
yeah, okay, appreciate that update. And then not a question for you, but just a comment with respect to it going through ports and harbors and unanimously passing. So I'm certainly in favor of this.
Chris?
The one thing that I just want to point out that it is pretty important is our port security is really taxing on our harbor system. We only have so many security officers, Stan being one, JJ being another, and do we even have another person on staff, Stan? Temps? Yeah. So, yeah, it's really taxing on us. So maximizing what we get for our security fees, I think is essential because basically we need to hire more temps or permanent staff to fill that because we're taking Stan and JJ away from what their real jobs are, and that's being our harbor master. So I think this is something that's important for funding and hopefully finding more security so Stan can do his job.
Yeah, we're gonna be advertising here real soon for those positions. So hopefully we can get them filled.
Okay, I'll just speak out. I was going to ask the same thing that Crystal asked about the increase. It seems high to go from 8% and then next year, but I understand you're trying to I figured it was something to the effect of playing catch up from not having proper fees before. I believe also it's a newer thing that we have to provide security out there to some level. Isn't that correct? We didn't have to always do that. Yeah.
Things.
Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm in support of this. If no one else has anything. Okay, roll call.
Okay, on the motion to approve resolution 2023-01 on first and final reading, Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
and Ms. Duncan.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. First and final reading on item E.
Okay, item F.
I move to approve resolution 2023-02 on first and final reading supporting the Southeast Alaska troll fishery.
Second.
So before we go to public comment, would the sponsors like to say anything? To introduce this?
Sure. We were asked to do this, and this is hand in hand with the next item on the agenda, of course. But as I'm sure most people in Sitka know by now, there's a lawsuit going on down in Washington that honestly is putting our entire salmon fishery at risk. And it's mind-numbingly, it's bizarre is what it is. The idea that if we shut down all the troll fishery in Southeast Alaska, the most optimistic projection I've heard is that 400 more fish would make it to Puget Sound. And I haven't heard, from what I understand, the state of Washington, the state of Alaska, of course, is also involved with this. Every city in Southeast Alaska. But as you'll hear us talking about next time, this is going to be, it's going to destroy a big part of our economy if this happens. And so while a resolution has limited power, I think it has a fair amount of power when in conjunction with, I'm sure that every city in Southeast Alaska is going to pass something similar in the state. So we need to go on record very clearly and say, this lawsuit doesn't make sense, and this ruling, and that we very much support our troll fisheries and would support the effort to overturn this ruling. Chris, you want
to? Yeah, and yeah, Tor explained it great there. I do believe it is very important as a community that we band together, support the state and the federal government in these not very scientifically attacked lawsuits that we are facing more and more every day. So resolutions and just coming together like this to show the support of our industry and our scientifically based fisheries management is extremely important. And this is just something that needs to happen, and that sadly we're going to probably have to do more and more. So this is just a good unifying thing as a community and for our industry.
Thank you. So after that, I'm going to open up to public comment.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the Assembly, my name is Jeff Farber. I'm a local fisherman. I'm on the Alpha Board and the ATA Board. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of Alpha because Linda's down at the annual IPHC meeting tonight. So very much appreciate your support for this resolution. And as I think Tor and Chris said, there's other communities that have or are in the process of doing similar resolutions. United Fishermen of Alaska has. We're shopping around the legislature. And so far, there's been pretty broad support. The importance of those resolutions, I think you guys kind of covered there pretty well. A lot of the issues, I think you guys are mostly up to speed by now because this is our second time we've been discussing this on the economics, the socioeconomics. So I just maybe kind of go over a few of those just to help support and give some of that background there. Obviously, commercial fishing is a mainstay in Sitka economy and the largest private sector employer in the state. And clearly our community will suffer severe economic hardship if the Southeast Alaska troll fishery is closed. Each trawler and commercial fishing operation Southeast is a small business. With 85% residency rate and an $85 million in total Southeastern economic output, trolling's reach is exceptionally profound. All Southeast processors would be impacted, especially the mid-size and smaller ones, which would probably not be able to support their local workforces. Some of the smaller communities in Southeast would see a good portion of their tax base wiped out. In communities like Elfin Cove, every resident has a troll permit. While we care about all marine mammals, clearly this lawsuit will not save southern resident killer whales, but it would destroy a whole region. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other public comment?
There it is. Good evening. I'm Matt Donahoe, the president of the Alaska Controllers Association, and I support this resolution. Just wanted to update you guys. I believe you're supporting us, so I'm not going to go on, but today was the last day to respond to Magistrate Peterson's R&R from December the 13th. There was another back and forth. Our attorney and the state and National Marine Fisheries Service dropped objections to drop the paperwork into the court on the 10th of January. The Wild Fish Conservancy came back with comments and arguments against that. And then today we filed our last comments on the comments on the R&R. So that closes and it goes to Judge Jones now. And we don't know what Judge Jones is going to do. We never thought they would get this far. It's so bizarre. One of the really egregious things about this lawsuit is that, yeah, the southern resident killer whales are in trouble, but this lawsuit provides cover for the reasons the southern resident killer whales are in trouble. Because the problem apparently isn't pollution. It's 400 fish we catch here in Southeast Alaska. They don't want to address the real issue, and that's the polluted waters, the urban sprawl, the incredible amount of traffic in Puget Sound. Not that we want to diminish the traffic, but going slow would improve the whale situation immensely. And there is a movement down there for that. But that's one of the things that really bothers me about this lawsuit, besides the fact it the economic base of Sitka. There's between 400 and 600 boats a year deliver troll caught fish to Sitka every year. It varies quite a bit from year to year. So anyway, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, I'm Jackie Foss. My husband and I have a troller here in Sitka. Thank you for picking up this issue. This is all hands, all people, all communities in Southeast Alaska. And so I am really grateful to see this brought forward in a formal setting from a city. And even though it's, the money is the next action, our standing together is really powerful. So I just really want to say thank you for that. And I've been writing thank you cards to our donors just because it helps my mom, you got to write your thank you cards. And I've been sending them all over Southeast Alaska. And so I've never written anyone in Myers Chuck before. So I'm just so excited to see Myers Chuck and Pelican and Sitka all joining together in support of our small boat fisheries. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dr. Ween?
Good evening, Richard Ween. I certainly concur with the previous speakers, Mr. Favor, Mr. Donahoe, and Ms. Foss. All of them are dedicated to the art and sort of science of fishing. So I feel that sometimes decisions are made and it is incomprehensible as to what the reasoning was behind it. I think all of you remember the saying, follow the science. And I think that the ATA and those litigants are following the science, but this time it is closer to being real in the more recent evidences and things that we've had. But there's only one important thing I wish the Assembly to remember when we get to the next item, and that is, remember what was said in this resolution, how important Sitka is to the fishing industry, not only for the economy here, but also for the state of Alaska. Because at the end of the day, it is, in essence, putting your money where your mouth is. And this is very serious. So remember the resolution when we move on to the next issue on how important this is.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, back to the Assembly. Oh, sorry, Eric, come on up.
Deputy Mayor Mosier, Assembly members. My name is Eric Jordan. I've been salmon trolling since my parents took me trolling in March of 1950. I've been running my own trollers since 1978 and have represented trollers as an elected or appointed representative every year since. My family, from my grandparents to my grandchildren, are trollers. I have been an activist for decades to conserve, sustain, and enhance our salmon runs and our troll industry. But this existential threat to close down our Southeast troll fishery in a fundraising charade by the Wild Fish Conservancy is a brutal assault on us that won't save one orca. It is the most vicious, misguided assault I have witnessed in a lifetime of experience with fisheries conflicts. I really appreciate the support from around Alaska for trawlers and urge you to join the hundreds of individuals and numerous businesses, communities, and groups rallying to our support. It will make a difference.
Thank you. Okay, back to the assembly. Tor?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that Eric stole the phrase I was going to use, existential threat. But no, I think we've got a lot of support around the table for this. And I hope we have a unanimous decision, because if a resolution is going to have effect, and then we need to have real solidarity. So I hope that everybody supports this because it is important.
Crystal?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this passed tonight, we basically support a resolution from the city and borough. Who is the intended recipient? Who else? Where does this make a difference? And maybe that's getting into the weeds of it, but who does this resolution
I
go
think a
to?
number, obviously, the judges who are involved, but also people like NIMS and this different governments involved saying, we are counting on you to back us up. So I think it's going to be, I'm sure, part of the briefs and things, and they'll have a big stack of them. And, you know, I'm not going to say that there's any one recipient, but I'd say at the very least, it's going to be included in the lawsuits. And then again, the state and the feds will know, and the states, I should say. I'm sure that Oregon is also looking at this as well, because it affects them.
Appreciate that clarity. And then I wrote down a couple of notes, but there were so many documents in there. I don't know where it came from. I wrote down 85% of troll permit holders are residing here in Southeast. I referenced the number 35 came out as far as remote communities that are impacted by troll fishing, and that 1 in 40 people in Southeast worked on a trolling boat. That's huge. So I will say I'm supportive of this one resolution, but I do think 35 resolutions would be far more powerful. So I hope the folks that are really leading this effort are reaching out to more than just us. And just to jump on and give credit for the sponsors, you wanted us to present as leaders on this issue, but we're not the owners. Southeast Alaska is. And so I'm really excited that the conversation is not just taking place at this table, that it belongs to other Southeast communities as well.
Tim?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, this is us, right? I mean, this is who we are as a people in Southeast. I mean, fishing is a huge thing. And I think this is almost the definition of judicial overreach. This is a individual inserting themselves into the lives of an entire region of a state, which they probably don't understand very well. So obviously I'm in support of this, and I Crystal shared what I was going to say, which is, you know, the more people who are involved, the more groups are involved, the more powerful this will be. So.
Anyone else? I'll go ahead and speak then. Yeah, I agree with everything everyone just said. It is mind-blowing to me that this has gone this far. We could go on and on about that. And that the science is not there. That this would be the answer to solve the issue with the orcas. So I'll obviously support this, and I want to thank the sponsors for doing it, and hopefully the lawyers can add this to the pile of things, and hopefully other communities will join us. So with that, I think we'll go for a roll call.
Okay, on the motion to approve resolution 2023-02 on first and final reading, Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
and Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item F.
Okay, so it's almost top of the hour, and this next item might be a little bit. Let's take a 5-minute break. So it looks like the assembly is seated, so we'll reconvene. So we're on to item G. Can I get a motion, please?
Okay, hold on. All right. I move to approve ordinance 2023-01 on first reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2023 Alaska Trollers Association Legal Defense Fund.
Second? Yeah, I seconded that because I'm co-sponsoring this with Tor. So Tor, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, this is basically a continuation of the last item, only with a little more teeth. It is, like we talked about at the last meeting in concept, and this is the actual item where we're looking to provide 25 or donate $25,000 to the ATA Defense Fund to help fight this. And, you know, resolutions are nice and they're helpful, but we need to actually stand up and also help fight it. And I remember last time when we were talking about it, thinking about it, and I bet you, I didn't run the numbers, but I'm pretty confident on it, that if you took the sales tax that the trolling fleet pays on just their harbor fees, it's more than 25,000, or at least pretty close. And not to mention how much people spend. And so this is, I mean, and that's just a small part of the impact that the trolling fleet has on us in here in Sitka. Not even talking to get in the fact that it's our culture and it's us. And so we've got to step up. I know other communities are, to varying degrees, are also supporting monetarily. And I don't know how much, you know, some of the small ones obviously are significantly less, but as we just kind of learned and talked about, we have the largest troll fleet in Southeast. So it's up to us to step up. And I think it's, you know, 25,000 are probably appropriate for right now. We talked about trying to do more, but this is, I think, appropriate at this juncture. And because we don't know what's going to happen, and it's, you know, if I would dearly love it to fail here soon, and we can say, okay, that was great. And but you know, this is a fight we probably are going to be in throughout the years. Hopefully not this particular item, but it's going to be similar things will be before us, and we need to be aware of them, because this is not only, I mean, this is Sitka. And so I really think it's important that we do this. We have it coming just from the general fund, no games, no, we talked about some other funds that were out there, but then there's competing issues there. This is simple, and we need to do it. So sorry to get into advocacy and not just explaining what we're doing.
That's fine. So we'll go to public comment now on any item or on this agenda item.
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. Clearly, this is something that is very important, having read the information that has been presented to us. It's kind of baffling how this got this far. But however, the important thing is that I did a little more background research. And for example, I looked up the 990s of the Wild Fish Conservancy. Firstly, it's been an organization that has been around since 1989. They've been doing this a long time. They certainly seem to have a lot of support from places like NPR. And it even seems on this particular issue, maybe even NOAA itself. But the important thing is when you go over the 990s, nonprofits like to veil themselves from their donors a lot of times and what money is being made. So I was only able to capture 18, 19, and 20, which means 17, 18, 19. And you can see even back then in 2020, they spent the vast majority of their revenue on legal expenses. And in 2019, it was over $1 million. So And in reviewing their side, as it were, it's just kind of interesting and odd. The judicial overreach is something that's very real in this country. And so you can't predict what some of these individuals might foist on a whole community. And by the way, these kind of things are active around the world where they're looking to shut down fisheries. So this is actually not unique or novel. One of the things that I would like to suggest, since law today is money, and the thing is that you should up it to $100,000, quite frankly, and then give it out in $25,000 tranches. So they don't have to keep coming back here for it, because this is going to be a defense based upon legal talent. And so there is no reason to accept $25,000 here. It's nothing, especially to at least the amounts that the Wild Fish Conservancy is doing. So bottom line is they've been around a long time. They have a lot of friends in high places. They are apparently reasonably funded. It's not super funded. Their revenue in 2019 was $1.8 million, of which almost $1 million went to legal. And again, I don't know what they spent last year, but I guarantee you it's more than $25,000. So make it 100 and give it in tranches.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew Donahoe for ATA. You guys have the information and you're up on this. I'm attracted to Dr. Ween's proposal, but for some reason. I don't really have anything to add. I just want to, as the president, I just want to say that I really appreciate the city of Sitka stepping up for this. And it's surreal. This is like one of those bad dreams where you're being chased by a glacier, you know, and you're just running and look, I had this dream as a kid. You look over your shoulder and that glacier is gaining and you're running as fast as you can, but you're not moving and the glacier is going to run you over. When we first heard about this, we thought, what? An absurd. All the science debunks this, but this court would not allow science into the court. The magistrate treats the pronouncements of the Wild Fish Conservancy as if it was pearls of wisdom from Mount Sinai. I don't understand it. But anyway, thank you very much. There'll be other people to support it, and you guys are very patient. You were very patient last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. For the record, Jeff Farber. I'm on the ATA board and Alpha board, again, speaking for Alpha. Ditto with Mr. Ween's amendment to the proposal, but no, seriously, do very much. Thank you very much for that. Sitka has about a third of the troll fleet. You guys understand that. This is likely leading to an appeals process, almost certainly, which are very, very, very expensive. The Wild Fish Conservancy is a serial litigant. They really are, and they've just increased, I think, their whole padding their budget with that, including, $1 million in federal grants that they got in 2020. So that's just kind of the stuff we're up against. So I think in order to defend our communities and to invest in them, these kind of things just are going to come up, and we'll definitely be thinking about a longer term approach to how to handle them. But like folks have said, we'd never thought it would ever come this far. So appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your support this evening. My name is Tad Fujioka.
I've lived basically my entire life in Southeast here, including the last 2 decades here in Sitka. I've spent about 10 of those working at City Hall and Public Works. Now I'm the chairman of the board of directors of Seafood Producers Cooperative, and so that's the hat I'm going to be wearing tonight. SPC, we built our Sitka plant here in 1980, and the current tax assessment rolls says it sits on the second most valuable taxable parcel in town. In addition to property tax, we pay several $100,000 in raw fish tax that comes back to Sitka. We paid over $900,000 electric bill last year to help stabilize the electric rates for all Sitkans. Between all of the taxes and utility bills and lease fees, last year the city received more than $2 million from SPC Fish. SPC is a co-op. We're owned by fishermen members, including more than 100 Sitkans are co-owners of our company. And in addition to our local fishermen, most of our employees are also locals. Between our fishermen owners and our crew, there were more than 230 Sitkans that received an SPC paycheck last year. That's 1 in 30 adults getting paid from SPC. Our business is split roughly half troll and half longline. We need both of those halves in order to be profitable. King salmon are our highest margin species, and that's because we fillet most of them using local labor. At the SPC board meeting last Friday, ATA had asked us for a donation of $48,500. We heard from our fishermen members, just as you did 2 weeks ago and are hearing tonight. And we also heard from our senior employees. The fishermen told us to donate some of the money that we made from selling the fish they caught last summer that would have otherwise went back to the fishermen. Employees told us to take some of the money that would have went into their profit sharing pool and contribute that to ATA. So even though ATA only asked for $48,500, the SPC board voted to contribute $59,000. It's an investment in our company's future. We can't afford to lose access to troll salmon, and neither can Sitka. So I encourage the assembly to be similarly farsighted and make this investment alongside your citizen fishermen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Courtney Howard. I'm a commercial fisherman. I came across some language on the Wild Fish Conservancy's website, and they seem to take issue with Chinook salmon harvested in coastal marine mixed stock fisheries, such as those managed pursuant to the Pacific Salmon Treaty. And they've kind of targeted this attack at the commercial troll fleet here in Southeast, but you know, they've got I think a larger vision that involves essentially not allowing anybody on the west coast of North America to catch a salmon in saltwater. And that's what that is. Chinook salmon harvested in coastal marine mixed stock fisheries, such as those managed pursuant to the Pacific Salmon Treaty. That's commercial, that's charter, that's sport, that's subsistence. I mean, so this is kind of the tip of the iceberg on what these guys have in mind. And I think, yeah, it's real important that we don't let them get away with it, kind of thing. And really appreciate all your guys' support. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Jackie Foss. My husband and I have a trawler here in Sitka. So I just wanted to talk to you for a minute about the other people who have contributed financially to this. First is the fishermen. The number of people who have sent the money that they earn off king salmon and other salmon, including people who don't even catch salmon, donating out of their individual pockets. The city of Craig was our first recent municipal donation, and they donated last time we went through Pelican has passed a resolution and donated. Port Alexander has already donated. The hatcheries are engaged and involved, all the aquaculture associations. And we had a super nice letter to the editor from the boat company as well. So I feel super just grateful to live in a place where everyone's rallying around small boat fishermen. And so I know Sitka is the biggest and it's the most, and our ask might feel like a lot, but a third of the fleet is here, and donations, people give what they can, and small communities give what they can, and bigger communities with most of the fleet give what they feel is appropriate too. So thank you for pursuing this, and thank you for hearing us. And it really is everyone in Southeast that's working. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment on this item?
Hello, Assembly members. My name is Roger Hames. I represent probably a third generation, going on a fourth generation, family-owned business here in Sitka. It started in the mid-1930s. Our businesses and our investment and our commitment run extremely deep in this community, and we are grateful to be a part of it. And we care very much about our economy, not just what's good for us as a businesses, but about the entire community of Sitka. We really are dependent on each other. And the steps that you have taken, or the commitment for the resolution, wonderful. The financial commitment is good. And before Mr. Ween spoke, I thought it'd be nice if the city would pledge more to that, more to the $25,000. It would be nice. I've been asked to give 5,000. I'm probably and most likely going to give more than that. It's that important, and it's wonderful to see the support behind this. It's extremely unfortunate of where it's come to. And again, people kind of shaking their heads and saying, why is it and how is it so far? How's it come so quickly? But I think not just with overt agendas, but covert agendas as well, that really maybe are on the table here. But we're all too reliant upon each other for making and staying with the community. I was a founding member of the Sitka Economic Development Association over 25 years ago. I am still on that board because I care very deeply about this community. So you're on the right track. I would ask you to consider something more, but we just care a lot, and we depend a lot upon the various aspects of our economy, and I can't say it enough. We rely on each other. So thank you for your consideration, and thank you for your time and your commitment. I know it's not easy, but thank you for that as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
In the previous one, sorry about that. My name is David Ritchie. I'm an SBC board member, commercial trawler Sitka since '08. I wrote a piece in the Sentinel last Friday entitled "Wild Fish Conservancy Seeks Legalized Thievery of Alaska Kings." Sarah Peterson kindly forwarded a copy of the PDF to the members of the Assembly. And I thank you, Assembly members, for this opportunity to speak. And our community recognizes the gravity of the threat Sitka faces, and it's encouraging that a vital and necessary economic investment in our troll fleet is being strongly considered by the Assembly. So thank you for that. We're all in the same boat together, whether we like it or not. So what I was going to say was getting sued by eco-terrorists is how trollers learn Latin, as best I can tell, because vacatur was totally new to me. And apparently that's Wild Fish Conservancy speak for "we're fixing to steal your kings." The Wild Fish Conservancy lawsuit is a contagion of extremist judicial activism and must be stopped before it destroys trolling and spreads to other fisheries. And how to tell the legal fix is in? Southeast trollers catch vanishingly small numbers of the Chinook that southern resident killer whales depend upon, whereas the marine fishers in Puget Sound catch hundreds of times more of these same Chinook stocks, the same Chinook forage that the Wild Fish Conservancy pretends to care about. And Chinook abundance is not the problem for anyone. In fact, Chinook abundance is higher today than it was in the early 80s. Southeast trollers have seen reduced harvest share over the years precisely so Chinook stocks could be rebuilt. The Chinook fishery is managed for sustainable harvest for all members of the Pacific salmon trading, but also for marine predators like killer whales and sea lions and seals. And Chinook harvest is also not the problem. That's what the Pacific Salmon Treaty was established to assess and address. Southern resident killer whales are not starving for lack of Chinook forage. They're being loved to death and hounded and unduly stressed because of where they live and where they eat most of the year. The largest problems for southern resident killer whale exists in the Wild Fish Conservancy's Puget Sound home waters. And it's things like orca capture in the 70s that deprived Puget Sound of more than 40 killer whales, death by captivity or killed in capture. The witch's brew of toxins endemic to Puget Sound that cause miscarriages and birth defects. A whale watching harassment industry that has quintupled in size since the 1980s. The underwater noise torture from intense vessel traffic that interferes with killer whales' ability to prey and to communicate. The burgeoning sea lion and seal populations that eat more Chinook forage by far than orcas and humans combined. Habitat destruction, the dams, I could go on, but the point is, none of this runaway urbanization is Southeast trollers' fault. Southeast trollers are being scapegoated, and our livelihoods are being threatened based upon a lie. We are being blamed for starving killer whales when Southeast trollers are emphatically not the problem here. So fight this insulting and infuriating lawsuit we must. There's ways just to close here without in radio land you can help, which is you could call a federal and sorry, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Jim Moore, former president of Alaska Trollers Association. And I just have a couple of interesting bits of information I picked up in the last couple of days in doing some research. I listened to a conference about the southern resident killer whales conducted about 5 years ago, and a speech by Dr. Andrew Treitz, who's a Canadian DFO scientist. And in his presentation, he pointed out some interesting facts about, this endangered species. In fact, in the US, it's critically endangered species of the southern resident killer whale. In Canada, it's just endangered species that they don't have the other qualification. But he said that it was listed as endangered, I think back in 2005, 2006, under a particular criteria that went by the numbers. If a population was below a certain level of numbers, it was listed as endangered. And he pointed out the fact that for the last 100 years, this population of whales has been below that threshold for the last 100 years. It's been below 100 animals, according to his figure, 98 in fact. 25 years ago, the population was 98. Today, it's 73. So the population trend is in decline. But if you go back 45 years, the population trend is increasing. And he says under the current way that they're classifying these animals as endangered, they will never, ever be delisted. So you have, this iconic animal that everybody loves. They've got names for all of them. And this shameless group, is using them to achieve their aims, which aren't to save the killer whales or to destroy mixed stock salmon fisheries on the ocean. The other part of their agenda is to eliminate salmon hatcheries, which they feel are are detrimental to the recovery of wild salmon. And the other thing I thought that you might find interesting is I was on the East Coast last week at a conference at Woods Hole. I'll tell you about it on a break or something. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Jim.
Hi, I'm Danica Majeski for the record. I just wanted to say that I think this is a very large topic and I'm very grateful that it is being brought up, especially coming from the youth. I really don't want to see trollers being taken away or the opportunity for that, especially as a renewable resource such as salmon. So I don't want to see them go away, especially for the fact of it is very hard to find such a good resource here in Alaska, especially in Southeast, that can happen for such a long amount of the year. And we can't just rely on something such as tourism, especially when it comes to big problems such as COVID just hitting. Stuff like that can be something so detrimental to small towns like Sitka. And by trolling, it was able to help us in a long-term events. So even though COVID hit us, we were still able to make some sort of process and do something for our town. So I think this is a very good topic to have been brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I think that's just about everybody in their seats. Let's bring it back to the assembly.
Just, if I can just a couple of quick clarifications. Because of the rules of assembly, we can't change the amount tonight without going to 2 more meetings. I said last time 25 was what I've talked about with Matt, and honestly, I wanted to make sure it got through. So but I'm hopeful that with everybody pitching in, I love hearing about how lots of other places are pitching in. It'll get us through this crisis at least, but I would not be at all surprised. In fact, I'd be a little bit surprised if it didn't happen, that whether it's this or something else, that it's not something similar is back before us in the near future, just because we've got to fight to protect it. So anyway, I hope that all the testimony convinces us that we need to do this.
Yeah, I'm in support of this. And actually, I thought quite a bit about, last time $100,000 came up too. And there was another comment that stuck with me. And one of them, it was about the public outreach component of this and the importance of this. And I think, a step was taken tonight. All those high school kids who are sitting here, they heard a lot that I'm sure I'll hear questions about that in the future because it's, this is new to them. And actually, I'm in favor of the 25,000 at this point in time. And I know it's a hassle to come back again and again, but I think it's probably really important to keep this in front of the community. And it's really important to go through this process as, if we increase if you come back for another 25 or whatever you're coming back for, that we go through this process, because I don't want this to just be dealt with and gone. And I don't want Sitka to be the funding source for this. I do want this to be, I was glad to hear that other communities are stepping in. Because I think it's an all hands on deck. This is Southeast Alaska under threat. And, I think it's important. So yeah, the hassle factor of coming back and going through this process may be there, but the fact that that people are going to pay attention to this long-term, especially as you go through the appeals process, hopefully it won't go that far. Hopefully this next judge figures it out. But I agree with Tor, if it's not this one, it'll be something else perhaps. These folks seem to be pretty capable until somebody makes them pay for it. The other thing I would like to change, I think a little bit, is the conversation about, as I heard it here a couple of times tonight, trollers paid a bunch of taxes, so we owe it to them. I don't see it that way. I see it as a community investment. I see it as coming out of all of our pockets. I see it as something for all of us to contribute to. I don't see it as the trollers have earned this. Okay, you've earned it because you are Sitkans and you're part of our economy. But I think it belongs to all of us. It doesn't just belong to the trollers.
Anyone else? Crystal, Crystal, go ahead.
Mine are questions with regards to the documents that were included in the packet, and there were a lot of them, and there was a lot of legal jargon. So I'm going to put that just so that I make sure that I understand what was submitted. From the way that I understand it, we are not going to be the funders, nor is ATA. They're an intervener in this suit, but the bulk of legal costs will be absorbed by NMFS and ADFG, right? Those are the original defendants in the suit.
Yes. Yeah, but I believe we are, or we, I'm not a member of ATA. Third parties can join a lawsuit in a support or against it. And so, and that's often critical, I think is the word I'm looking for, that I had a long talk with my brother about this a little bit, that, that sometimes those third parties carry more weight than somebody like, than the government actually, because they put a human face on things and stuff. So as I understand it, ATA has joined it as, and I forget the exact, Brian, maybe help me out. What's that?
An intervener?
Yeah,
A
but
third
I think
party
there's
that joins the
as a
suit.
friendly. Yeah, so I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think my question was just that there are government agencies who took on and they were fighting this suit before the third party got involved. ATA is that third party who's joining, bringing their resources, which we are going to be, depending on the vote, will be one of those funders, but we're not ever going to be the person that's carrying the weight of this, that it still has the initial parties who are still invested in fighting this. So that's how it came across to me. And I wanted to make sure, because those were your guys' documents that you included as part of the packet. Also the Q&A, it said winter fishery could be closed. Are we talking about this fishery? Is it closed? Are we moving
Not
in
yet.
that direction?
Not yet, but if this,
It could.
but I can pass it off to the experts here.
I can actually answer this. If the judge deems that the incidental take is no longer allowed, then yeah, Fish and Game will give an emergency order. I don't know how many hours ahead of time, but yeah, our winter fishery, king fishery that's going on right now could close any day.
Okay.
And
So-
then, well, I'll save mine for.
Okay, that answers that question. And then related to that, though, I had read that the lawsuit is in a remedy phase. I don't know what that means, but I also pulled other wording and verbiage that came out. And the way that I understood it was that the judge sent it back to be looked at by NMFS, correct? And the BIOP would be, BIOP would be updated. And we don't know what that looks like, but we're kind of worried because the way that it was worded was friendly to trollers to continue as is, because they found that it was not going to decrease orca populations with the new numbers, right? And the judge sent that back and said, relook at this, make sure it's within EPA. And so is that where we're at right now? Because
Would you like to invite Mr. Donahue up? He can, you can ask him to come up and.
this question is for anybody who could answer it. So if you would like to, as the
Sure.
sponsors, bring somebody up.
They're good questions.
Hi, Matt Donahoe. Magistrate Peterson vacated a thing called an ITS. It's an incidental take, call it a permit. The S stands for statement, and I don't know why, but without an ITS, we cannot fish king salmon. For some reason, because the ITS allows us to take a small amount of threatened kings if we don't threaten the population. And seeing as how we take so few, and according to NIMS, take so few, when they were asked what would happen if there was not a troll fishery in Southeast Alaska that would benefit the southern resident killer whales, the NIMS attorney said nothing. There'd be no improvement for the southern resident killer whales. The earlier question about this, the state and the federal government, the state waited a year till we joined the suit. Wild Fish Conservancy filed the suit in April of 2020. ATA joined the suit in March of 2020. The state of Alaska joined the suit in, I think it was June of 2021. We're not sure. We were told by the Commissioner of Fish and Game that if the troll fishery was shut down, the state would appeal. Now we're hearing different rumblings from Juneau about that. I don't know. We didn't ever feel that National Marine Fisheries Service had our best interests in heart. About the a BIOP and a National Marine Fisheries Service, the judge has ordered, if her R&R prevails with Judge Jones, her recommendation is that National Marine Fisheries Service do another BIOP, which will take a minimum, according to Scott Rumsey, who's the acting head of West Coast Fisheries for NOAA. It'll take at least until November 2024. That's 2 seasons without trolling, without king salmon fishing. But not only king salmon fishing, because in the coho fishery, we take incidental mortality of king salmon. So you're out there trolling and you catch a king on your line, it's down in the water, you haul it up, there's nothing there but a gill or something because the sea lion took it or something like that. That's incidental mortality. And we can't have incidental mortality without an ITS. I don't think Judge, what's her name, Peterson knows what she did. It's much more complicated than that even. It interferes with the treaty agreement. We don't know how. We've been asking that question. Did I answer your question or did I have too much?
I might have to do these question by question, just so that I'll ask you a question, you'll answer it, and then I'll go on to the
Okay.
next one. So what I heard from you is that the ITS had been rescinded, but that
Yes.
trolling has not stopped.
Peterson recommends that the ITS be, the legal language is vacated
So it hasn't been yet.
because it has to go to the presiding judge, Jones, and then he will either agree or disagree with Peterson.
Okay.
She's a much lower, she's a magistrate. She can't make this decision. She's doing a report and recommendation. And we don't know what Jones is going to do. He already agreed pretty much whole cloth in an earlier stage with Peterson. And it's common, it happens more often than not that the presiding judge completely approves of the R&R. It's unusual that they
What
disagree.
is the timeline on that?
What's that?
What is the timeline on that?
Today, it went to Judge Jones' court, and it'll be whenever he does it. I don't think there's a law on it.
Okay, so the ITS has not been vacated. Has the BIOP been sent back to NMFS to be reworked?
National Marine Fisheries Service is already working on a BIOP. And so we're hoping that that will, mitigate this situation to Judge Jones, but we don't know. And nobody else knows either. The state doesn't know, National Marine Fisheries Service doesn't know. We don't know.
And you said that the BIOP will take some time. What was that timeline that you said?
According to Rumsey, who's now the name on the lawsuit, because he's basically the head of the West Coast NMFS, National Marine Fisheries Service.
Okay.
He said it would take at least 2 years, until November 2024, because of the NEPA process. You have to have, among other things, public hearings, and those have to be scheduled, and then they have to be reviewed. So at November 2024 is the most optimistic date available to us on this. It could be November of 2030 for all we know.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure that the way that I see it is that it's 3 parties working together. So I think you call them NIMPs. I've never heard that before.
National Marine Fisheries
Yep.
Service.
And then ADF and G.
Yeah.
And then you guys entered as a third party. And so you guys do have that working relationship, right?
We have a working relationship, but we don't agree on everything. That we don't agree that we think it's possible for a temporary ITS. They did that for the trawl fisheries in the Bering Sea. I can't remember the case. You guys, some of the fishermen on the assembly might, but who knows? They're not talking to us in the court, and we're not really hearing much from NIMS or the state. You know, we haven't had an update from the state at all since I talked to the commissioner at the Board of Fish in March, and he said that the state would appeal a negative ruling, and now it sounds like they may not.
Okay.
So in which case it would only be ATA's lawsuit. And the reason we joined this lawsuit in the first place is because as a small boat fishery, we're not in love with National Marine Fisheries Service. They tried to close down the Maine lobster fishery over entanglements with northern right whales and their anchors on their lobster pots. There had been no documented entanglement with Maine lobster pots since 2021. And that entanglement stopped because they closed areas that the northern right whales were going into, and they started to season later when the northern right whales were out of the area. Why then, 21 years later, did they write a management plan that closed the lobster fishery? You know, that's NIMS. That's our buddies NIMS. We don't trust them. The only people we can trust are the local communities and the Alaska Trollers Association and Alpha, the fishermen's organizations locally.
Okay. So you guys may go at it alone.
It's a possibility. It's not a remote possibility. It's I don't know what odds to give it. We certainly hope not.
Mhm.
But we were alone for a year without the state support.
Okay. I just didn't understand how that would work because they are listed as a defendant in the lawsuit. So would they?
But it's
remove
our fishery,
themselves?
they're going to close down, not the state of Alaska,
Yeah,
not
understood.
NIMS.
I'm just not familiar enough with the court system. If a defendant
I'm
decides
not
that.
either. It's not something I spend a lot of time in, you know.
And I appreciate how you and I are having this conversation as 2 non-legal experts. So I appreciate that. And then, so what I heard was that the 3 of you at this point agree that you're trying to pursue a temporary ITS.
We don't have any course of action until we hear what Jones's decision is. And he may say, hey, this is a bridge too far. The National Marine Fisheries Service is already at work and a BIOP. And critically, as our attorney argues, Doug Stedding, critically, the mitigation hatcheries in Puget Sound are underway. One of the reasons Peterson recommended the vacating of the ITS that closes our fishery was because she said that the hatcheries aren't proven. The funding is theoretical. Well, they were funded by the 2019 treaty. They've been operating, producing mitigation Chinook to feed the killer whales for 3 years. And so she allowed the Wild Fish Conservancy sued in part over those hatcheries, wanted to close them. And this judge said, well, they seem to be helping the whales. We're going to let the hatcheries continue, but we're going to take the ITS from the troll fishery, which is really bizarre because Those hatcheries were there to mitigate fisheries like the Southeast Alaska troll fishery for their minuscule amount of impact on Puget Sound king salmon. She's trying to have it both ways. If you read all the documents, and it's too much for, unless you're really involved, it doesn't make any sense. And our attorney argues that, and hopefully Jones will listen to him.
Can I ask one more question? And it's about a document that was included as part of the packet. It was from Danny Everson. Was that person acting on behalf of ADF&G when they authored that and it was included?
Yes, she's an advisor to the Commissioner of Fish and Game in his office.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I saw that listed after her name. So I assumed it was on behalf of the organization that she was representing, but I wasn't sure. So those are all the questions that I have right now.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has any questions for Mr. Donahue?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Leach, did you have something?
I was going to say this, the reports at the end, but I think it's applicable now in case the room clears out before we get here. I just want to let everyone know that city resources, besides this financial potential appropriation, are being expended on this in support. We have a lobbying firm that we have on contract, and we've had discussions with them already, and I got a quick couple of bullet points back from them. So our firm set up and participated in a call last Friday with staff from the congressional delegation, and that's from all three of our delegates, to further discuss options to help with the lawsuit. It was reiterated by all staff members on the call that it's a very important issue for all three members of the delegation. They've found legal counsel with MSA and the Salmon Treaty expertise to assist them, and are coordinating with each other regarding a possible amicus brief that they could file jointly with the court, and said they intend to circulate a draft internally among themselves as early as this week. They're also researching the recent policy legislation and funding appropriation that Congress approved that's specifically targeted at mitigating impacts on the Southern Orca resident population, to show that Congress has already stepped up with real dollars in line with NIMF's requests. For example, substantive mitigation efforts are already underway and should be given time to produce their beneficial effects. Our firm reiterated that the city and borough of Sitka is considering a donation to help defray the legal costs. The delegation is also looking at language referenced in the email I have from there, that the Maine congressional delegation sponsored, which was included in the just enacted omnibus bill that passed to protect the Maine lobster fishery, which was brought up. The Alaska delegation staff is meeting with the Maine delegation staff, particularly the staff of Senators King and Collins, on the point to explore the possibility of similar language to protect the Southeast Chinook fishery to be included in a bill later this year. I think the last thing that was discussed and very important here is the benefit of getting some of the Washington State congressional delegation to understand and support, or even join in on the amicus brief and or support a legislative correction protection effort. So there's a lot underway right now that we've worked on and we've asked our firm to look into. So it's a lot more than just the appropriation here. We're putting some significant efforts into this.
John, so for members of the public who are listening, can you explain what an amicus brief is?
Brian, can you explain what an amicus brief is?
Friend of the court.
Which would do?
Which means people who have standing or an interest in the lawsuit can join in even though they're not a named party.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I'll speak up on this because I'm a sponsor. I want to thank everyone for speaking up and bringing this to our attention. I did know about this, I have known about this for a while, and then Tor brought to my attention the recent events that have been accelerating. And so I agreed to sponsor the discussion last meeting, and then this funding mechanism this time. I would like to fund more, but right now I feel like $25,000 is a lot of money, and I'm glad to be able to support this for sure. I think trying to fund more at this time would be premature. Someone brought up like the last meeting was really long, and by the time we got ready to discuss this, we had 15 minutes. So we were trying to squeeze our comments in really fast. And someone mentioned something about a precedent that could set or a concern. And I said, my comments, I felt when I said them didn't really explain what I meant. It was more that it is the way you could look at it is it is a setting a precedent. And I don't really have a way to basically address that other than I view this as kind of an emergency situation in that if this is not, we're not successful, it could shut down a great part of our economy. And as Tor said, it's not just our economy, it's our culture. It's who we are as a community. And then someone else said, I think it was Roger, that we rely on each other, and that's very true. No one here, we are on an island, but no one person is an island, and everything that we do affects one another. And so at this time, I feel it's completely appropriate to fund this, and I really hope it goes well. John, thank you for the information about that. That's very helpful to know. I was wondering where our help was with the congressional delegation, and I'm glad that our lobbyist is trying to organize some help on that end. So I will be glad to support this. Any other comments? Go ahead, Chris.
This is actually touched on just a little bit ago, but I want to mention it again because even with all of my involvement with fisheries and knowing of this lawsuit going on for quite some time, I was very tunnel visioned and focusing on the king closure, and that, the trollers were only going to lose the kings only. But it's not just a king closure, it's closure, period. There's potentially no coho fishing, potentially no chum fishing. And it's even up for debate whether they'd be able to fish in our hatchery THAs, which would amaze me, but potentially that could even be closed to them. So this is a lot bigger than what I initially thought that it was. And I just wanted to emphasize that, point it out to the body and everyone in the room and anyone listening, that it is beyond just a king closure, and even more devastating to the trollers than I had initially thought. So this lawsuit is extremely important for them as a gear group and for the city, and the revenue that we'd be losing if it actually goes through. So of course I support this 25,000. I think it's a good point for tonight. I definitely support it.
Thank you. Go ahead, JJ.
Thank you for all the testimony tonight. That was really impactful. I think it showed the breadth of the concern and the community that we have here, and the community not only in Sitka, but in the region. We are a regional community, and that's important, that we see each other as neighbors and helping hands. So I'm very in support of 25,000, and let me know what I can do to help you guys with my time, because there's money and there's time, and I'm going to help in whichever way that you ask.
Thank you. And my final comments would be thank you for it is encouraging in the midst of this difficult time to see the community and hear of other communities in Southeast band together. It's a very unifying thing, and I'm very grateful for that. Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2023-01 on first reading, Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on first reading.
Thank you, Sarah. So it's the top of the hour again. Let's take a 5-minute break. So we're just going to wait another minute or so until Crystal gets here. Okay, the assembly's seated. Let's get back into it. Can we get a motion for item H?
I move to approve ordinance 2023-02 on first and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2023 Parks and Recreation expense in the amount of 92,615.
And my apologies, that should be first reading. Sorry.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
that's why I paused.
Yeah.
So what she said, that's what I meant.
Okay,
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. John, would you like to give an interview or introduction? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, this last year, the assembly passed in our annual budget, the two positions to start what started as the Community Recreation Initiative, a group here that really expressed some concern over community schools kind of dissolving and looking for an outlet for our community members and younger folks and older folks alike to have some things to do from a recreation perspective. The only thing that was passed in that budget, though, was the two positions. Since then, I've asked Barb Morse to help out. She's on board as a temporary employee to help construct this program to kind of set some ground rules, build some structure to it, and then write the job descriptions for the full-time folks that will be here running this program as it ramps up. But that moved towards some things we could do right now. So you've seen we've got a couple community events that have happened. We have city basketball, we have city volleyball that's taking place now, and there's no operating budget for that at all. So we've used Colliver's Parks and Rec budget to cover some of this, but that's starting to dwindle. So I asked Barb to put together an appropriation to kind of outline what the program needs to operate. And then as part of next year's budget, we'll give some budget estimates, but Barb is here tonight. And if she wouldn't mind coming up, I think it's a good opportunity for the assembly at the appropriate time, if it's now or if you want to wait, I'm not sure, but to ask for some kind of granularity on the numbers, maybe describe some of the revenue sources and some granularity to the expenses for the assembly to consider for this supplemental appropriation for the rest of the year. But I don't know if you want to ask now or if you want to do after public.
Why don't we do
comment.
public comment first and then we'll have her come up.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So that brings us to public comment. Anything from anyone in the community?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. There's no doubt that parks and recs and community schools and all of this is something that is extremely valuable. And it is nice to see that people are interested in making this kind of thing happen. However, I'm a philosopher at heart and I like context. And the context here is we heard that $25,000 was a lot of money for the giving it to the trollers, but here we're going to throw out $92,615. And when you put those into context as to the value and return, it becomes a philosophical thing. I'd love to see the drama and debate team take this issue on resolved. What is it better to spend it on? And so, you know, I know you're going to pass it, so I don't have any problems with that. But I do feel that if you want to look for another source, in the most recent thing from the school board, I saw that they were looking at the pot tax as $300,000, and they're getting this year for student travel, I think 150. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So my notion is take some of that, I'll say, pot tax, because the school district used to administer the community, the after-school kind of things, and just push it that way. Because there are plenty of creative ways to find where money can be spent. But again, context is everything. And so 25,000 is a lot of money, but so is 92. Depends how you spend it. Spend it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. As I see no one else in the audience except for Barb and the staff and Shannon, let's have Barb come up and you can give us some more information. You got to press it. There you go.
There you go. Hi, Barb Morse, temporary Parks and Recreation Coordinator. And yeah, just to clarify, one thing is that although we're asking for the 92,615, we anticipate having revenues of approximately 40,000 this year, which would decrease the actual impact to the general fund by that amount. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about revenue sources or expenses or anything else you have on this request.
Thank you. So let's move to assembly discussion. And if anyone has any questions, they can ask Barbara at the time. I guess if you don't mind, I'd like to go first. And this, I guess this is for John too. So a good portion of it, it looks like it could be one-off, but I don't know that. The online platform for classes, facility rentals, payments to referees. Well, it looks like the online platform might be a one-time payment. Is there any of that just a one-off, including maybe the supplies? Do you have any information?
On the supply equipment item, some of that will be one-off. Some of it would be ongoing. So like for some programs like basketball, you'd have, basketballs you'd have to buy and nets for volleyballs and things like that.
Okay.
But because we basically have very little in the way of sports equipment or anything that was pretty much gotten rid of, that is, an item where there won't be that much in the next budget proportionately. Things like, the contracted services, that has to do with things like paying referees. So we have income that offsets that. It makes money, to not a lot, but it will more than cover expenses. And that will be on the revenue side. The same with the instructor item. And it may be, next year, it may be that those items would be more, but then the revenue would be more, proportionately or more so. So, it's not, does that answer your question?
It does. Anyone else?
Hi. So temporary wages would be for city, or that's where the referees would be included.
Referees are under contract services.
Contract service, that's the 38.
As our instructors, if someone teaches classes for us. But the temporary wages, we do operate 7 days a week and, till like 9:45 or 10 at night. And so as far as like staffing things on weekends, we do need to have people come in that are temporary people to help out when we have extra things, sometimes in more than one building at once.
Okay. And then $300 for a telephone, other things in this contract area, that's just people.
That is where also the
Purchase
expense
services.
for the
Online platform.
online facility.
So how
scheduling.
does that break out? It's kind of a big clump for me to have
About
a website.
21,000 is for referees, so that's the major item. Then there's instructors, which is another, I believe was 9, and then the online platform is for, I believe, and that is an ongoing expense, but that is again for both registration, for taking in money and doing things online rather than having to have city staff handle them or handle cash and checks on the weekends in our office all the time. Just, it will pay for itself in staff time. And it will also do the facility scheduling, which can be broadened to not just the school facilities, but the sports complexes. So, it will just be a very good tool to have that, but there will be an ongoing expense
Okay,
for
so
that.
most in that section is ongoing, that 38,500. Okay. And then supplies, sports programs, office setup. So when community schools dissolved, there was a auction or a giveaway, and those basketballs and nets kind of left the facilities. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, there is
Okay.
nothing.
There's nothing.
With the exception of the skates were donated to us. So we had lots of skates, which was great.
So that wouldn't be, that's a one-time 37,000, or are you expecting a lot of
It wouldn't be
damage?
totally, zeroed out, obviously, because if you have classes and if you had art classes and you'd charge the people for the art supplies that was in the classes, but you'd have to spend the money first.
Okay, so
You know,
art
so
supplies.
just depending on the volume of how big your operation is, the expenses could go up, but so would the revenues.
Okay, so what is the plans for different classes? Because if this is, this 92,000, but we've got 400 people in community participating, that's maybe pretty good. If this is just going to serve 200 people, like what are your plans?
I expect it to be a pretty broad group of the community that would participate. I'm sure that there's probably been at least 400 individuals already, more so than that, I would guess, between our open gyms, our city league sports, and our other events that we've had so far. One of the other functions and during the summertime is really when we will have more programs. So we anticipate, maybe we're not going to start up full blown what community schools did in the heyday, but I anticipate that we will have quite a few camps and youth activities going on. So, that will be a major undergoing.
Okay. So that I'm hearing you suspect, so that these are direct monies to cover maybe what's already happened, if you suspect to do more in the future, or that this is money to cover what you're going to be planning on doing for the next
It's
5
funds
months.
we need between now and June 30th. So when we have volleyball and, teams sign up, sponsors sign up and pay, and players sign up and play. If there's more teams playing and there's more games, everybody plays 12 games, we're going to be paying more in referees' fees. So we're just projecting that because, and if for some reason we didn't have as much enrollment, if we based it on 10 teams and we got 8, well, our expenses would be lower too.
Okay. So these are projections based on something. It's just, for this much money, I'd like to see more than 2 pages and a little spreadsheet here. Like, what's behind this? Where do these numbers come from?
I did have the opportunity to run community schools for 10 years. And so when I was doing my planning, I relied some on that, but I've also reached out to probably a dozen communities in Alaska and, have done a fair bit of research to make sure that things are good projections. And even one of the things that I was charged with doing is developing the facility use schedule and the fee structure, and which has been implemented. And so we have, I can project what our revenues are. Like even this month, we'll probably take in about $4,000 plus with gym rentals, because it's a very busy month, and with open gyms.
Yeah.
So, but I have expenses associated with that. And so that's part of the reason that I didn't do the appropriation back in November, is because I wanted to have a few months to really look at what's happening, what's our trend, what are we going to roll out this year.
Okay.
So I feel pretty good about the projections I've made here.
Okay. And this bit here about that 52,000 deficit after, so that was just pulling you along in those months just to kind of gauge what it would cost to run the programs?
Basically, our request of the appropriation is 92,615. And we estimate that we'll bring in at least 40,000. And so that would decrease that 92,000 amount to the general fund to approximately 52,615.
Okay, I see the word deficit here and I wanted to know what that meant. Where is the deficit?
The
in that?
expenses will exceed the income by that amount, not the 92,000. That would have been a 92,615 deficit, but instead it will be a 52,615 deficit.
Just want to make sure our accounting principles are solid here and we're not spending money that we don't have. And to do that, to ask, we're a nice body here, to come and ask money before it's spent is a valuable process. Okay, thank you.
And those are really good questions. Crystal?
The school district, are they providing in-kind support or any sort of financial support?
No, but we do collect the fees for the facility use. So, we're the ones that schedule it, and then when fees are appropriate, obviously the school activities don't pay anything for using the facilities. But, we have a memorandum of understanding for how we can work together, but there's no financial support from the school.
Do they provide the space for your offices?
Yes, we were fortunate to get the previous space
Okay.
at Bletchley back, which is,
So office space and use of the facilities, and then keeping the revenue based off of that.
right.
Okay.
We pay, the city set up our own internet there though, so we have
Okay.
our own system and what have you.
What about any other financial partners or opportunities to partner with others in the community?
Through the Community Recreation Initiative, we have, and Sitka Counseling has been the fiscal agent for this, approximately $30,000, but a lot of it had been earmarked, like one $10,000 grant for teen recreation. So, we have been doing that. We're reaching out and working with other partners. This summer, all the details aren't finalized, but we had cooperatively submitted a grant with the Sitka Science Center, and we'll be, as part of that, we'll be receiving approximately, say in June, $20,000 that we can use towards summer programs. So, yes, the answer is yes. We are looking for ways to work with partners and ways that can benefit the community.
Okay. And then you had mentioned the Community Rec Initiative team. I was actually wondering something kind of similar to what you were hitting on, which is establishing goals for the program. Do you want certain numbers? Do you want, is that where that conversation would take place? Are they kind of guiding the program as it develops? Because I know that it existed once upon a time, but this is brand new and it's housed under the city. But where is that kind of accountability as far as numbers or how many we want to serve or coming up with that kind of criteria? Is that the team's role?
They have been involved, as would Parks and Recreation, in the future, more so probably, since it's a city entity. But I'm trying to think what your question was. The accountability for the programs.
A little bit, like how do we say it's a success? Not accountability, I used the wrong word, but how do we look at the end of this year and say, look, we brought back these 2 paid positions and look how many kids are being served and how many community members are being served? It's a little bit along the line of what JJ was talking about as far as numbers. So how does that come out?
So the Community Recreation Initiative did develop a plan, and I know Andrew Frisky presented it to the assembly at one point, a couple times actually, and it was rolling it out in stages. First stage was getting it up and running, getting the structure in place, and then starting with the programs that are obvious gaps, like City League sports that no one else is doing. When community schools dissolved, a lot of youth groups stepped forward, like the soccer program and the basketball program that have, are running exceptional programs for youth. And our role with them is to work with them to schedule facility use and to facilitate them being able to do a good job serving that. We're not going to go back and try to take over what other people are doing. So part of what I've been doing too is sort of assessing the gaps in service that exist. and looking to fill those needs, not duplicate what's already being done, and to
Mhm.
support the other groups that are doing things well, so that we can get back to having that robust level of service.
Mhm.
Even, and it doesn't mean that we'll be doing things exactly like community schools did in the past, but we will just to make sure the community has a full slate of offerings. In the plan, the community initiative had come up with, stage 4 was have a community rec center. So see if they ever get there,
Thanks for the update, Barb.
Any other questions for Barbara?
I just had something I wanted to bring up because Ms. Duncan asked the question about partners and other financial contributions. One of my goals, and Barb and I discussed this, was, we have Friends of the Sitka Public Library, we have Friends of the Sitka Animal Shelter. I'd love to see something like Friends of the Parks and Rec, if it's the community recreation group, a similar type structure. But as we've talked about this in the past, donating money directly to the city, it's hard to define where that goes. So we're working on some things in the background to say, I want to donate to this program under these terms, and then it doesn't just get shuffled into the general fund somewhere. So I'd love to see a partnership of something like that, but that's where I'm trying to
May I
go.
add to that? Yeah, that is something that's on my to-do list, so I have been working on it. I guess the first step I did was to I joined the community with money from the health summit, so no city money, a membership to an organization, that the National Park Foundation, that it is their sole purpose to help parks and recreation set up really strong park foundations are friends of, and they provide support. And I have, a half dozen people I've talked to seriously about helping to get this up and running, that I think would be really good people, including people from Parks and Rec, Community Initiative, other leaders in the community. But so, I am moving along on that, and I would expect that before my temporary part is done, that we will have filed the incorporation to get that, process and rolling.
Chris?
Okay, so when we come into this FY23 budget, we had slightly over 200,000 budgeted, and we need more money now. I guess why the difference? I know this is kind of starting the program up. Did things move along faster? That you needed more money to get yourself operating, or yeah, I guess that's kind of what.
Yeah, maybe it's my fault, but I think originally intent might have been that, this will be a year we just get organized, figure out what we're doing, start planning. And just from everything I heard from the community and from people really wanting to get things up and going and running, I thought that it would be best to go ahead and start giving service back to the community, that that's what they deserve. And so, having that some funds available to us through the community rec initiative that I could use for some of that recreational equipment, we just decided to go ahead and move forward because, we were able to get the planning pieces in place sooner than maybe anticipated. So.
Okay, yeah, I was just kind of curious, like, was it just a budgeting,
Well, I think
way
also,
underestimated, or, being a startup, did things move along quickly and you needed money to start operating? And, this is, I really want to see this succeed. So I just don't want to have to come back to the assembly a bunch of times, always asking for money. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to understand why we were coming back to us. And
well, I also think that it was my understanding that part of it was I didn't really know what the expenses would be. No one had really, they got the 2 positions. We knew we needed that, but we weren't sure, what else will we need, and so being able to sit down and think, okay, if referees are going to be contracted service, we're going to have to pay them, even though we'll get money back.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. I've definitely misjudged some expenses in my own business as well. So I can appreciate that. So yeah, I guess that was kind of my only real questions there.
Okay, thank you, Barb. I feel like she kind of ended up being in the crossfires here when it was more of a budget thing for John. But we
No
do
problem. Thank you.
appreciate your comments. So my comments and questions are more towards John, and I do share, well, I guess I'll backtrack. First of all, Barb, I don't think you didn't mess up. I think you did what you were told. You were hired as a temporary worker to restart a program that had been non-existent for a couple of years. And I've heard that you've been doing a great job. I mean, there's going to be a lot of benefits. It builds healthy interpersonal relationships within the community, increases community bonds. It helps children. They have the summer rec program that would be starting up hopefully, because just giving people positive things to do in this community is very crucial and important. And in the long run, it helps with other ancillary issues that rise when you don't have things to do. But so having said that, and thank you, Barb. Having said that, I do share some of the concerns from some of the other members. So here we approved for a budget of $209,000, and I understand where JJ was going with that. I think we're all trying to figure out, okay, we do this, but how often? So we got last year we approved for $209,000 for the baseline staff. Now here's a $92,000 appropriation for basically half a year. So does that mean, annually it's going to be 200,000 plus 92,000 twice, or what kind of things are startup costs? What kind of revenues full on, or is that part of the discussion? I guess part of that is more of a budget discussion for next year, but it does help with this decision in that I think members want to know, okay, we're approving this, but what it's going to cost long-term. Do you have any comments on that?
I think we'll be talking about that in our upcoming budget sessions when we go over the general fund, because this program would be funded out of the general fund. But the 209,000, as you already know, that was for the two positions. As I said, that was to get agreements in place, to build structure, to build the program, and investigate things like we're coming forward with right now. Yes, it is a deficit budget right now if we were to separate Parks and Rec, and that is a hit to the general fund. I think, and don't quote me on this one, I think the total costs for the program look to be around 300,000 for the next year, and that includes the salaries in there for those positions. So I think this is close on what an annual budget is going to look like. We still have to look at what the revenues are going to look like, because more programs, more revenue, but also more programs equals more expense. So we gotta play that balance game. But something important to remember is there's financial investments and there's service investments. This might operate at a deficit, but I think we've heard loud and clear from the community that this is what they want. Now, obviously, there's some tough decisions to make if we come forward with a budget that is a deficit budget and we start making cuts in certain areas. This might be an area that's targeted for a cut, because is the ROI financial? Don't know, but if we were to measure the ROI in a service that the community asked for, I think it's hitting the mark. So I know it's not a clear answer.
No, it actually helps knowing that, the baseline estimation, because I can support this, but next year we're realistically looking at a baseline appropriation for this about 300,000. And I knew it would be a deficit budget. It's not gonna be a moneymaker. It'll be a cash loss in some point. I just didn't know it was gonna be quite this much. Having said that, I do believe it's a worthwhile investment, and I hope we don't have a deficit, because I want to put extra money into our infrastructure sinking fund when it comes to budget time. I'm counting on that. So I think this is a great thing, and I can support it. A lot of unknowns on the costs, but you're right. It's an investment in service in the community. I think the community has spoken very clearly and loudly that they're very interested in this. So, any other comments? Okay, Sarah? Oh, wait, did you have another comment?
talk more. Barb, I didn't want to single you out. What you're doing in general is fantastic. I was a center, not Center for Community is currently, because that's where I work, but community schools, when I was going through school, was a big part of my life. And seeing you know, the 10 years of that coming and starting the rec program is just fantastic. And that knowledge will carry through so well to the benefit of the community. My questions were towards you because I think you authored the letter, but that was that. If I can encourage you, if this does go to a second reading, to get a little more definition in here, maybe singling out the one-time expenses from the recurring ones, that would just help me and probably your average citizen understand what the meat is in this.
And I could second that. I would, I mean, I don't think we need like dollar, like little items, but a little bit more granular data would just be helpful. So with that, Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2023-02 on first reading, Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yested,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosher.
Yes,
Motion passes 6-0 on item H, and that's first reading.
thank you, Assembly. So this moves us on to persons to be heard on anything on or off the agenda. Dr. Ween.
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. And at this hour, I feel so alone here as I look back into the empty seats, but it is still heartening. We live in a very odd world. And we live in a world where people say you will own nothing and be happy. And I think part of that motivation politically may be actually part of the salmon issue that we have here. Because if you look at what's going on at the WEF, et cetera, this is all part of a general conversation that I've been reading about and listening to. It's an odd world when Harley Davidson is thinking of going all electric. I called the LA Hells Angels and they had no comment. But the important thing here is that we need to focus our priorities. We have legislative priorities. There are certain ones that come out of the blue, and these are the ones that we need to address in a firm and complete way. I find it interesting in the odd world that we live in that we have to get a lobbyist to get our congressional group together to speak. I think that all of those participants, and everybody knows their names, need to be available on a phone call from our city and talk to us about these pressing issues. I don't believe this is a lobbyist. We're from Alaska. There are not a lot of people when compared to the rest of the United States. And a lot of these folks know us personally, not me, but know other people personally. And so this is where it has to go. We cannot depend on a lobbyist. And one thing that was said here just a moment ago about average citizens understanding things, please don't use initials and everything. During this thing here, I just heard a lot of ITS and this and that and that. You have to understand you have people listening. And they may not have gotten the packet and they may not have read it. So please go to, as they say in the AP reference book, you know, first notice, and that is you spell it out. And one interesting thing is that 7 whales have washed up on the shore in New York on Long Island, and it's just in the last couple of months. And it is believed that it was from them building an offshore turbine energy thing, and that this affected the whales and they wash up. This doesn't happen there. And the funny thing is, nobody is saying anything. The whales are freaking dying, but we're going to have our windmills. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else under persons to be heard? Okay, that brings it to reports. The mayor is absent. So administrator?
I've got a couple things really quickly. So I know I don't want this to get the community shaken up here, but the raise grant is due at the end of February. I know we've put in a raise grant application for the haul out year after year, but now we're moving forward with permanent fund money that was passed by the vote. That's going to take some work to get engineering and design and specifications done. That's going. If we were to expend a significant amount of effort into a raise grant application to get done in this window, we can't even clearly specify what we want right now. And we'd be foolish to not understand that raise grants typically go to each state each year, one rural, one urban. And the fact that we were the recipient of a raise grant this last year, they say that's not a disqualifier, but we're going to get a look that we just got one. So I think it's the best strategy for us to kind of get our designs more nailed down with, engineer stamped, ready to go. And then we'll know more granularity in next year on what we want to ask for. Is it the next phase of this haul out? Maybe the shipyard portion of it and not the haul out portion of it. Well, let me back up. And we also considered a raise grant application for Eliason electrical project, but we had we had Melissa Henshaw look into this along with our contractor that we're using for some grant writing assistance, and they've done a lot of work trying to get the business case to balance out, and we're not able to get that to score high enough right now. So again, we need to get some better numbers for that. However, the month of April, the Port Infrastructure Development Program, PIDP, and the Small Shipyard Grant Program, those are both due, and we are pressing full steam ahead on both of those, and we have more time to put a better application together. The pot of money is not as high, but we might be able to find some dollars in the Small Shipyard Grant Program, especially to put towards the haul out in the shipyard, and then maybe if it's even study more clearly what Eliason needs as far as the electrical project goes, that would be helpful. The last thing I have is I will be out most of next week to Southeast Conference in Juneau. And when I return from that, we'll jump right into the budget sessions, but I'll come back with hopefully some great news from Southeast Conference. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson?
No report.
Okay, brings us to Assembly Liaison Representatives. Anyone?
Yeah, just a brief discussion or heads up about planning and zoning. They had a longer, more contentious meeting than normal last time, which is saying something for P and Z. But there's a pretty good chance that we're going to see the item about the youth advocates of Sitka house that they're trying to use. So kind of heads up that we're probably going to be in I believe, a quasi judicial situation there. And so Sarah may have to, and Brian may need to lay the ground rules for our new members, but it's a decent chance that's coming because it was pretty contentious. So.
Okay. Anyone else? No? I'll go. I attended the I think it was a second Sustainability Commission meeting, not this Monday, but the previous Monday. Went over very well. Bree Gable is working under the supervision of Amy Ainsley, and they're kind of coming up with a plan to go forward and putting objectives in place. And new members are learning, how the process works and learning about each other. That's a growing period, but I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be good, and we'll keep everyone informed as time goes on. Sarah?
We have a number of volunteer opportunities on our boards and commissions, the Animal Hearing Board, Health Needs and Human Services, Historic Preservation Commission, Library Commission, Parks and Rec, and then Tree and Landscape. So if folks are interested, they can contact our office.
Thank you. So any other reports? Okay, that moves us on to executive session. So Sarah, I see on the notes you gave me here, there's to make the first motion, right, only? Is that what?
It is my recommendation that the motions not be combined, that
Okay.
the assembly treat each matter separately.
Okay, so can we have a motion?
I move to go into executive session to be advised by the municipal attorney regarding the juvenile delinquency proceedings involving the fire damage to Crescent Harbor Dock, which may have legal and financial impacts for the city and borough of Sitka.
Second.
Okay, public comment on that? Okay. Comments from the assembly on that motion? No? Okay, Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to go into executive session, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
and Mr. Pike.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0, and we'll be meeting in room 7
Okay.
in the back corner.
So, um,
Make a motion to return to regular session.
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we had a discussion and we informed our attorney and gave him some direction on that issue. Can I have a motion for the second item to go into executive
I
session?
move to go into executive session to discuss settling a sales tax debt, the immediate knowledge of which would adversely affect the finances of the municipality, and invite in Finance Director Melissa Haley.
Second.
Public comment. I don't see anyone there except for a staff member. You're welcome to say something. Okay, all in favor? Do we have to call roll?
Yeah.
Okay,
So on the motion to go into executive session, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosher. Motion
Yes.
passes 6-0.
I get a motion to reconvene?
Reconvene is the assembly in regular session.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yay.
So I think we're at the point, just convene. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned.